and that seems to be working okay. And Mid-Columbia Center for Living would like to continue to engage our services there. And I would say, as I'm starting to pull back, because I've got a lot of big projects going on here, Molly Rogers has agreed to step up into that role. And so this truly would be a lone executive type scenario. And we actually proposed doing that almost as a sabbatical, but contractually, I don't think we can do it that way. So it would have to be like an IGA with a Mid-Columbia Center for Living. And so her office is fully staffed, and she's also mentoring somebody into that youth services director role. And this would be an opportunity for that person to continue to step up and allow Molly to spend more time at Mid-Columbia Center for Living, working on things that need to be worked on and the things that I can't do with a 0.2 FTE currently. So that's that question, and ideally Center for Living would like to have her as a 0.75. And again, if we were going to do that, we would do that as some type of an IGA or contractual relationship. And then again, they're requesting a 0.25 from me. So that is kind of the request that is out there. Our challenge, in the way that I look at it, is we can't allow that organization to fail in this community. So what extent you all want us to continue to support that or not is really what I am hoping the three of you will discuss. So.
Wow. Comments?
Well, it has to be done. It's a 6-month evaluation of work here to be done. I agree with the HR, since we can't find anybody to help us. I don't think that putting a big heavy load on Nicole is in our best interest. And so I'm pleased that the mentorship opportunity came up. So pleased to see that. I know that Mike is stretched, but that will be stretched for another month, and then he'll be lightened up just a touch. But I think that it's we've given the authority. It's our baby, so we've got to make sure that keep moving forward. Are we still down 40-some people on that staff?
No, I think we've got, I don't know, I'd have to go and look at the newest number, but plus or minus 20 open positions.
Oh, that's better than it was.
Yeah.
Services are desperately needed in our region, and with the state and the federal throwing money to it, we need to keep working to fill it and get it back on track so that we don't have to do it anymore. Or we have that conversation and we do it all. Mm-hmm. So however we move forward with that within our health and human services realm, conversations need to be happening, but I see this as the short term right now, and hopefully that short term might get us over the hump. That's worth a try.
Yeah, I just, I'm trying to stay out of the conversation a little bit because I am on both boards.
Sure.
But I guess I would start off by saying that, Center for Living is truly like unbelievably appreciative of Wasco County stepping in. It's been a dramatic change from where it was, 6 to 9 months ago. I think that the organization is fairly stable. I think the biggest challenge we have, as you mentioned, is, finding people to actually fill the roles that need to be done. I think generally we're fine. We're providing the services that are necessary, but there's a lot more services that need to be provided. So, and it's not dissimilar from what we're experiencing at Wasco County in terms of we're down. Last time I looked, it was 20 positions, but it's something like that. So we have a lot of positions here to fill, and it's the same thing at all other counties and other businesses and everything else. So I think we're all kind of experiencing the same thing. The IT thing is, I think, a good thing. I think it's a long-term thing. We've talked about it before. I think there's other IT needs in the community that potentially we might be able to fill, and it's mutually beneficial when it's helps us kind of build up our IT component, and then we can kind of share that. So anyway, yeah, I think it's super helpful. I'm hopeful that the HR thing works because I do think Nicole, needs to focus here. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. We are out for an executive director and a deputy director. So both of those positions have been posted, and I think we have some applicants for those positions. So I'm not sure. We have a meeting next week, and we'll get an update as the board as to what the status of that is. But my hope, it's usually a little bit too hopeful, is that over the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be able to fill those positions and have less need for some of these things in terms of the thing. But anyway, I guess the main thing from the board of Center for Living is just appreciation to you two, to Wasco County, to really help us through what was really a tough patch. But I think that by and large, we're doing much better, and I think we're okay, and we got a little ways to go. So, but I'm going to stay out of it beyond that.
Okay, except for my questions of you.
Sure.
I guess my first question about this to talk with the two of you about is what is the background and the history here? So when was Center for Living really fiscally solvent? Because it just seems like anecdotally, it's been a long time since the community have felt like Center for Living is up and running, serving, fiscally solvent. I mean, when did things start to backslide? Can you help me out there?
Yeah, a little bit. So I would start off by saying mental health services is not unlike public health, right? And you know all of the different sources where the money comes from. And mental health is largely like that. Largely funded through federal sources, coming through state, those kind of things. So it's very similar. And as you know, it also is somewhat political. I would say quite political, meaning that, our politicians at state and federal level make programs and provide funding for different things at different times. And then you build up organizations and bodies and everything. And then that falls out of favor and those funds go away. And it becomes and so it's the bottom line is a real challenge to manage that kind of thing. But I've been there for almost 12 years, I guess. And I would say it's been up and down that entire time.
Okay.
There's times when we are, really, I would say, kind of flush with money and having a hard time hiring all the people to provide those services. And then it almost always transitions into kind of an over the top where now those funds are kind of going away and now we end up with too many people, and how are we going to deal with going through the trough? So this is not an unusual or different situation, in my opinion, for Center for Living. It's probably the biggest challenge. We had executive leader change, which was a big problem. We had a unionization, situation that happened during that time. COVID, on top of all
Oh, yeah.
that was probably, when you mix all of those things in together, it was, really, I would say it was kind of the perfect storm of challenge for Center for Living during that time. So I would say it's typically always up and down. And I think my experience at Public Health is similar, that there's always ups and downs and things like that. So I would say that this current one has been, since COVID. I mean, COVID just hit us hard because a lot of the service we provide, we're face to face. And so then how are we going to do that? Trying to transition to virtual services, that was challenging. And how's it going to get paid for? Challenging relationship with the CCO, bad contract with the CCO. All of those things have, for the most part, been rectified, very well. So I think the prognosis from here forward is really good as long as we can find the staff. So that's our biggest challenge. Hopefully that helps. But I would say the last couple of years, it's been a big challenge, and primarily during COVID.
Yeah, that makes sense. When did that contracting with the CCO go awry?
So it was the contract, I think, just maybe finished at the 20, is that right? I think, or the end of fiscal year 20.
Yeah.
That was when the contract ended, and we didn't have a contract at that time. And that contract was at least 2 or 3 years prior. And so we've been living through that contract. And that contract was unique in that we primarily had capitated services or capitated funding before that. And that, the state and federal funding was primarily based on a population, and the funding came just as capitation, and capitation obviously is based on bodies. Then the CCO and the CCO process of the state was changing more to value-based payments or fee for services. It was fee for service, but then now it's kind of value-based, which is always confusing. What does that mean? But basically fee for service was the big change for us, which meant you provide a fee, you document all the fee related documentation you do, and then you get, it's more like a doctor, right? Where they had to do billings and all that kind of stuff to insurance companies. And that was something that honestly, we weren't well set up to do. Our staff was not well set up to provide the documentation. Our billing was not, necessarily great at finding all the codes and how all the codes went with all this stuff. And I think that we struggled with that contract in that change, even though we had a glide path. Okay, so we have this glide path which said that, we'll cover any shortfalls you see, but we're going to cover those like 9 months later after you experience them. So there was a lot of stuff in that contract that in retrospect, we were like, what were we thinking? Now, we didn't negotiate the contract. The former director was the one who negotiated that contract. So a director that was one before the last one.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you can't foresee a pandemic at that time. And
no, there was none of that at the time.
And I think also, just for those that are listening, isn't it true that fee for service is one thing, but community mental health does a lot more than just one-on-one visits.
Oh, sure.
And you have to be reimbursed for that somehow.
Right, and that was the problem. I think, when we entered into that fee-for-service realm, we just immediately went into the red, and then we were burning through cash at the time. We had just finished building a new building. We had just got a loan from the county. I mean, all of these things, like I said, it was really a perfect mental health authorities kind of storm that was not helpful to the thing. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, and it's changed a little bit now. I mean, Tyler can talk about it more, but I think that the fee structure, the CCO took a lot of responsibility on for mental health. So where the money typically flowed, directly to Center for Living on a capitated model, it kind of had been changing to transition where a lot of that fund was coming through the CCO, and then the CCO was directing who's going to provide. We still have, as a county, we still have local mental health authority that we have to do, but the CCO got the lion's share of the funding and was passing it through. But then, the contract was not something that was helping the money pass through. There was just so many things happening at that time. But we'll go back and say that Tyler and Silas and Al and the whole staff out there, they did great work to explain to the CCO. That was where the challenge was, is having a good relationship with the CCO and being able to explain to them, this is what's happened, this is what happened in the past, this is where the challenges were, and this is why it can't continue. And I think what I heard as a board member is that the message was finally received, and it substantially changed how the CCO contracted with us and the funds that they provided to us. I mean, in fact, one of the most amazing thing was they were able to negotiate the CCO providing us with a $2 million payment in 2 parts to help with all of the things to kind of get us back to kind of right a little bit. And that was a huge thing. And then the contract going forward was, and we're still working through that because there's still a lot of things that we're trying to, systems, and we don't have the people, and if we don't have the folks to actually provide services, it's challenging. So, but that's really what happened.
And when we talk about CCO, we're really talking about Pacific Source, right? An
Yeah.
insurance company, just for
Yes.
those in the audience that may not know those acronyms. And it's really just an insurance company
Yep.
for Medicaid.
Yeah, and a coordinated care organization, and we chose, this region chose, set up itself as a region, and then chose who was going to be the operator of that. And at the time, Pacific Source was chosen. And there's a board, which you're on.
Yes,
oversees-
it's a very long meeting.
It's a very long meeting, yes. They do feed you most of the time, but yeah.
Not during the pandemic.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting system that we have now. There was a lot of reasons why we did it, and some of it worked out well, and I think some of it, is challenging and had to change. So.
And I think that the Health Council, which kind of oversees the insurance and how it's, we are putting a bead on mental health for sure, and trying at least, I think I'm trying. Karen Joplin from Hood Rivers not really been a part lately. I don't know why. So I'm kind of, trying to be sure that Center for Living is front and center in their, that how important it is, because that's where the community mental health services are, not in the private sector, so
Right.
just making sure that everyone remembers that.
Yeah.
Because they're looking really broadly at all the different ways that mental health is provided. And it's like, yeah, but this is the safety net. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I think that's the key component, because there are private parties that have started to provide more mental health services to some of the population that need it, but the population that ultimately needs it is the safety net folks.
Right.
And generally speaking, those private parties don't really want to serve, that's not their primary folks they want to serve. And so there's a large population of folks that have to be provided with the local mental health provider, which we have the responsibility for. And that's why we formed Center for Living to do that work.
Yeah. So question for Tyler. Well, maybe just, Molly is already at Norcor, right? And just a correction from 2 weeks ago when I talked about the new model at Norcor, and the business manager I thought was going to be hired in the next fiscal year, but we're actually going to go out for hire January in this fiscal, or 22, 23. But probably won't be on board, I would imagine, until probably next year. So later in the year. So I do think Molly will continue doing what she's doing at Norcor. Plus she had now with 0.75 at Center for Living, and I imagine there'll still be some oversight at the juvenile department, right? I mean, I'm assuming Molly's on board for all this.
She is. I was hoping that she was into this meeting today, but she had a conflict. So, yeah, she's on board with it. But again, we want to make sure that everybody's on board with that.
Right.
And like I said, we had originally, when we talked about, can we allow her to do a sabbatical, right?
From the juvenile department.
From the juvenile department. So logistically with the equity and all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't work very well. So we would end up doing probably IGA with Center for Living for that 0.75 work or so.
Okay. And I guess really the only other comment I would have is I totally agree with Steve and Scott. We need to do this. just, and I know that you will, Tyler, but just to, keep an eye on burnout for our employees that are really stretching thin, and I know you will, but it is real,
And honestly, that's why I took the HR piece off the table. Because there's too much here, so.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I mean, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Right? You've got a whole set of circumstances over there and a set of circumstances here. And, I think everybody that has stepped up for this has gone into that eyes wide open.
Mhm.
But it's still a challenge. So.
I think they're learning lots of stuff,
Yeah.
different organization, different issues and stuff. The one thing I would say is that I do think that with all of this, the priority is still Wasco County. So when there are maybe some challenges in both sides, I think hopefully we understand and these folks understand that Wasco County is the priority, not that we're trying to ignore Center for
Right.
Living, but we're stepping in to help. But if we need, if you have to choose between the two of them and you got emergencies going, we're going to have to put the fires out of Wasco County first before we deal with Center for Living.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know, the group that's working over there, we meet as a Wasco County team every week just to talk about those things, what's happening over there versus what's happening over here, and how do we manage that? So.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah. Okay, but I think it's fair to recognize it's a lot for all of you, and it is, it's kind of putting a hold on maybe some of our strategic things that we wanted to move forward, and I think we just all need to recognize that Center for Living needs to be floated, and I think it's the right thing to do. And do we need an action or just consensus?
You don't need a
Just
motion.
consensus.
No, we need to direct staff to go pull together a couple of agreements and bring them back.
Okay.
That's what will happen, right?
Yeah, we'll come up with some type of IGA or agreement to be able to do that.
And thanks for bringing up the burnout here. Bringing that up at other organizations around because of the COVID and Zooming. We go from a 9 to 10 to a 10 to 11 and we never take a break to debrief what we just did or get ready for the next one. And, so that's been a conversation that I've been having with Tyler and a few other executive directors around. And I think it's real. And so we've got to, as we transition now out of Zoom meetings and back to in person, I think that it'll kind of get a little bit better, but thanks for bringing that up because it's really been on my head about losing people because we can't afford to lose people.
Yeah.
And even though we picked up 5 new employees the other day.
Yeah, that was,
Saw that.
that was a good day.
Awesome, But
Boom, boom, boom.
we're community wide and we can't afford to lose our community workforce. So
Yeah, we
I'll
are
leave it at that.
definitely in
Yeah.
transition, aren't
Yeah.
we? Yesterday, I tried to Zoom into a meeting because I was on the road. I thought, oh, it's so convenient. I'll just Zoom in, and it's like, oops, that one's in person. I guess I missed that meeting, so.
Well, it's interesting because I think state law now is public entities anyway.
Yeah.
Have to have hybrid
We
meetings
have to
all
do
the time.
this. Yeah.
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 I'll have to
I don't know how
talk
to-
to-
Whenever reasonable,
Huh?
whenever reasonable, yes.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Yes, whenever reasonable, and there's no definition for reasonable.
Ah, okay.
And the requirement isn't that we have a video, but that you have to at least have a phone line open. For instance, when we had the compensation committee meeting, I had a phone line open. Nobody called into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep going, but it didn't help that as soon as I tried to open that meeting, my sync went away on the phone. Hey, are you guys having that problem?
No.
Like the synchronization on my iPhone, poof, all my meetings went away that are,
Oh,
anyway. So there might have been a phone number, but it went away. Poof.
Yeah.
Andrew said we were having a little late.
Yeah, it was like magic. I got this little, anyway, we'll go on.
yeah, it's interesting though, because even though we are transitioning back to in-person meetings, which I think is a lot better, I think for us, it's really nice to have that because there are a lot, this is a big county with people
Yeah.
everywhere. And it's just nice to get participation when, you can't always drive up from the far south reaches of the county or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And sometimes even for us, it's nice to be able to just hop and join.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
So before we move on, maybe we have a thank you letter to the Wasco County team that has spent the time putting
Great idea.
everything together with Center for Living and make sure that they know from us that we
Yeah.
appreciate
Great ideas.
the efforts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Should we draft that somehow? We,
So-
meaning us?
I'm gonna let the pro do it over here.
Okay.
to get-
I didn't
I'm
wanna-
already making notes.
Okay.
get all of the, to get all of the right people in, all of that
Thank you.
piece, because I haven't been involved with it other than what Tyler and I talked about. So,
Okay.
okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Jessica, sorry to keep you waiting. We just had a little longer discussion than anticipated on that. So looks like you're going to give us the MCEDD update for a 5-year update for the economic development strategy. Awesome. Let's do it. Got your presentation to go up and you'll get a crook in your
No, I
neck if
don't
you
have
try
a
to.
presentation. I didn't expect.
Oh, well, we
She didn't
have
tell me she
it.
was gonna be here in person.
We saw it.
We have it.
Got one.
Okay, yeah,
We
I
do.
brought a USB, I brought my computer,
We
you've got
got
them, so.
We got it.
We're
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I wasn't really sure.
If we bring it up on here, it'll take a few minutes.
Is that something our audience could see if we brought it up?
We're working.
Okay, I think that would be good, because we do have some folks online there.
The first part's not related to the slide, so I'll just go and start talking if that's okay. But thank you, I was excited to come and see you in person. So just as a reminder of who MCEDD is and what MCEDD does, we, you guys know this pretty well, but we work to promote the creation of family wage jobs, the diversification of the economic base, and the growth and retention of businesses in our rural
Some
region.
PowerPoints, it's just a PDF.
That's fine. Of Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties in Oregon, and Skamania and Clickatack counties in Washington. Our work falls into 3 main focus areas. So number 1 is business assistance, where we have our lending programs, training for businesses, industry cluster development. Number 2 is our regional coordination, where we focus on challenges or opportunities that impact our communities across the region. And work on things like renewable energy development, broadband access and utilization, transportation and mobility services. And then technical assistance is number 3, and that's support for grant administration for complex federally funded projects, economic development services, and project management support for different efforts that are supporting the diverse regional economy. We also work with our regional stakeholders to craft the Columbia Gorge Economic Development Strategy, and that's what I'm here to present to you today. Some of the other specific ways that we work with Wasco County, of course, is we serve as staff for the Wasco County Economic Development Commission, and then we also receive a lot of grants for the link that have to flow through Wasco County. So we work probably most closely with Wasco County out of all of the 5 counties for some of those regions. I also had the chance to talk to Commissioner Kramer about, we have some new resources on the Oregon side that will allow us to expand our services around like grant writing over the next year. So we're looking forward to that. So the SEDS, if you wanna, you can go back up to the top. Sorry.
Yeah, you'll have to walk me through this.
Yeah, so the SEDS overview. So every 5 years, this is something that we do. We bring everybody together to develop this strategy to help come up with goals, strategies, and actions to create jobs, raise income levels, and diversify the economy. We do this under the direction of the U.S. Economic Development Administration, but also recognition that This planning is a really successful way to engage our community and leverage private sector leaders and establish a blueprint for strong collaboration. So the bullets are the main sections of the strategy, and I'm going to walk through that today. You can go to the next slide. So the process, it was developed across 2021, 7 public sessions with more than 100 folks, including local tribal governments, regional partners, ports, chambers, legislators, state and federal partners, businesses and individuals. And so each event kind of built on the last in developing the full strategy. It also included feedback from surveys, and we had focus groups with the Native American and Latino communities, thanks to the support from the next door. We presented the draft at our Economic Development Symposium and issued it for public comment, and then it was adopted by the MCEDD board in March. And then the regional overview. So the region covered is the 5 counties that I mentioned, with approximately 80,000 residents and numerous communities. We have a long history of working together and realizing how closely our economic fates are tied together. The strategy document also, it summarizes our regional economic development commission or our economic conditions across a number of measures and has a lot of data in an appendix. In the summary, for example, we note that as the region has a higher share of Native American and Latino residents, as well as veterans, and our housing market continues to grow tighter and our poverty rate is slowly declining, just to pick out a few pieces. On the next one, so throughout the public sessions, we focused on 2 themes: resilience and equitable outcomes. So resilience addresses how well we're preparing for and can respond to economic shocks such as natural disasters, disease like COVID-19, and man-made disruptions. And then equitable outcomes considers how economic opportunity is being accessed across the region by all of our residents. The next one. So the strategy was the COVID-19 impacts. It was developed as the pandemic continued, which really shifted the picture for this one. And it was built upon a COVID-19 economic needs analysis assessment that we completed early 2021 that identified local needs and priorities from impacts of the COVID-19 on the region. And identified ways we could collaborate to help solve those. So the slide right here is showing the recovery priorities from the economic needs assessment, from broadband, childcare, and housing to support for our small businesses, our workforce training, and building that resiliency. The SWOT analysis, this session analyzed our regional strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The slide lists the summary, and then the full document has details under each of these items. And it's not uncommon, depending on which aspect of something that we're looking at, to fall on different on strengths and weaknesses or opportunities and threats. So, for example, our regional transportation system, including transit, has seen a lot of growth, but our transportation infrastructure can be a weakness when we think about redundancy and resiliency with our bridges and highways. Some notable items are strong industry sectors, challenges of the disparities between Oregon and Washington, but also that's an opportunity for collaboration and accessing additional funding, and threats from drought, fire, and changing weather patterns are all noted.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I had a couple questions, just clarification. The first one under opportunities, it says adjusting tourism. And I wasn't sure what that meant.
Yeah, so some parts of the region feel over touristed.
Okay.
Is something that's not actually a word, but others are still hoping to get more tourists. So it was kind of like squeezing the balloon in different parts to help adjust where tourism is happening.
And then connectivity, I'm assuming, is broadband primarily in terms of under opportunities.
Yes.
Is that what connectivity means?
I think you're right.
Okay, I mean, obviously it could be lots of different things, but it seems like there's a lot of discussion about broadband.
Yes.
Connectivity.
Actually, under that we put broadband, and then we also put the completion of the historic highway.
Oh, okay.
Is a good opportunity for the region.
Okay, and then under weaknesses, it says lack of business expansion space. and I'll talk about that later, but is
Yes.
that gorge wide? I mean, did this process find that as being a gorge wide issue?
You know, that is something that we do talk about, gorge wide. So it says available and attractive commercial industrial spaces, shovel-ready land. Last week, we had the opportunity to host our Seattle Regional Director for the EDA with a great tour of the region. And so we stopped in Stevenson, Cascade Locks, Hood River, the Dalles and Dallasport, and met with all 5 of the ports, you know, and a lot of them are like, these are the 40 acres that we have. And that's it, you know. So that's a lot of what we're hearing. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems to be a gorge wide issue. Okay, that's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the other question I had was impacts of continued population growth. I wasn't totally sure what that meant. Does that mean like we're getting overpopulated? Is that kind of what that's behind that, or what's behind that?
So some of the items under that talks about the limited infrastructure, how our infrastructure that we have right now can accommodate additional growth, overuse of resources. And that one talks a lot about degradation of popular recreation areas and increased residential development in unincorporated areas. That was actually something that came up at a few of the sessions, talking about how if we look at the population growth that's happened, more of it is happening in our unincorporated areas than in our cities. Well, maybe not more, but I think percentage wise, and the challenges that presents, and that, you know, as more urban residents move to more rural areas, they're demanding services that meet the urban levels of service, but those are very expensive and create challenges for agricultural uses and that goes.
Cool, okay, that was my
And
question.
there's no government structure in those areas to, you know,
Except us.
except us.
Maybe.
And I was going to ask you something else, but.
Okay.
Oh, I know. Is there data that supports population growth? Where are we getting that from? And is that, I guess that would be like maybe county specific, or did we have population growth in the last census?
We did. I mean, it's been rather small. So what we have was that from 2010 to 2020, right, our population did go up by 11% as a 5-county region.
As a 5-county region, okay.
Wasco's was 8%.
Okay, thanks.
So a little less than 1% a year. I mean, in that case, on average.
Yeah.
Those were the PSU numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
And well, actually in the census as well.
okay.
Yeah, but so in Wasco County, for example, the county grew by 8%, 8.2%, but in that 10-year period, the unincorporated area grew by 7.5%. So that is.
So that would lead you to believe that we're getting more people in the unincorporated than incorporated. Or we're getting a lot of people in the unincorporated, like you said, right? Is that?
Yes, so, well, actually, so in Wasco County, I think this is saying that the 36% of your growth was in the unincorporated.
Okay.
Doesn't make.
It's not as bad as some, actually.
Yeah, I would say Hood River County is probably much worse.
Clickitat and Skamania counties saw over 70% of their growth in the unincorporated.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Which would be interesting to explore, because it could be because they don't have land in the urban areas. I mean, who knows what the question is?
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is that those numbers, based on the whole time I've been here and all the data I've looked, very consistent. Our growth rate is almost always less than 1%.
1% per year.
Yeah, like historically,
Okay.
except maybe for around the dam time or something. So we were fairly slow growing area,
Slow growing.
relatively speaking, and have continued to be that, even though sometimes like, wow, we're gonna grow like crazy.
Yeah,
And it's like,
exactly.
then you look at places like Deschutes County and other places like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we're not growing like that, which a lot of people don't want to grow like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and you know what, I'm just gonna, I have a couple other questions. We can let you go further, but it'll be
No.
longer than, you said poverty rate declining. Does that mean that people are less poor, or did you mean poverty rate was increasing? I wasn't really sure. What
So I think it would mean like, in my appendix, here we go. That the number of people in, below the poverty level is less.
is less, okay. In the region, the
In the
five,
region.
okay, okay. And do you have county-specific data for that?
It's most kind of surprising a little bit.
Yeah, unless they're looking at Hood
So
Yeah.
the low income population, so those under less than 185% of poverty, in Wasco County, for example, went from about, I say 37 to 30% from 2010 to 2014 to 2015, 2019. So looking at that, that's the American Community Survey, which does a few year estimate. So in that period of time, about a 5-year period of time, it went down from 37 to about 30 in Wasco County.
Be interesting to know what it is after COVID and what impact that had.
Right, so yeah, these figures were before COVID.
Just thinking of homelessness, for example, you know,
Yeah,
and how that
yeah,
seemed to significantly increase.
yeah, okay, and that's, thank you, continue, thank you.
Yeah, please do stop me. So from the SWOT analysis, we have the regional division of a bi-state region with resilient, thriving, sustainable rural economy that supports equitable access to a diverse business opportunities that act in harmony with our unique qualities, values, cultural and natural resources. And then from that, we pulled 4 goal areas, and each with their own goal statements. So strong businesses, robust workforce, resilient infrastructure, and powerful collaboration. So for strong businesses, we plan to enhance business innovation, retention, and expansion and entrepreneurship through equitable access to support services and capital, diversifying our industry mix and enhance coordination to address barriers to growth and sustainability. The key industries that were identified in the strategy include natural resources and value-added agriculture, manufacturing, especially beverage manufacturing, high tech and especially unmanned systems, healthcare, utilities and renewable energy, and then also arts/culture/tourism/recreation. So each goal area includes a detailed action plan with numerous strategies and tasks under them to achieve the goal statement. For strong businesses, our strategies focus on building a strong network to support our existing businesses, to develop additional space, target the key industries that I just mentioned, to help them grow, and then bring in new businesses and help bring more wealth to the region through exports. For our robust workforce, we want to have a talented multicultural workforce with family wage trainings that meet the needs of our industries that are here and help us provide essential infrastructure supports for that workforce participation. So this is the first time that we go on to the strategies that childcare showed up in our plan. So, you know, the need for accessible childcare to increase workforce participation and supporting economic growth was essential and is something that hasn't shown up in our plan before. We also, the action plan addresses the needs of pre-kindergarten to 12th grade and higher education, basic skills training and quality workplaces for our employees. Infrastructure, for resilient infrastructure, we plan to ensure our communities.
Can I stop us just a moment on the childcare with the workforce? We just received a letter from Kevin Lewis and folks down in Maupin concerned with the issue. I know that Carrie is working with Regional Solutions in the college. Is there any way that we could add Kevin into this mix
Yes.
that we could get him to help with his challenges and opportunities down in Maupin, South End, that maybe could contribute to the conversation?
Yes, that's,
Thank you.
I'll make sure that Carrie is connecting with Kevin.
Okay.
And maybe just to add to that, because I noted that in my kind of commission call, was the thing that is kind of surprising to me is he's saying, and I've heard this before, that they're closing the Head Start program
Yeah.
in South County. And I'm like,
Right?
okay, who made that decision and who was involved and why weren't we aware of that? I mean, I don't think we were aware of that.
I wasn't.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're like closing Head Start. That's like a pretty big deal. And I know that they kind of, it was in Tide Valley, didn't it? Move down to Maupin and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised. I was disappointed. And I was thinking from a federal standpoint, that's a federal program. It's like, we need to talk with some more
Yeah, I
federal
would
people to
start
say,
with-
what's going on here?
I would start with Nancy Patton on that one, so.
Yeah, well, I think it's all related, but I'm
Right.
glad you brought it up because, yeah, were you guys aware that they were closing the Head Start program in
No, I
South
wasn't,
County?
yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Seems like a big deal anyway. It
Well,
was a big deal when they moved from Tide Valley to Maupin.
Muffin. I think that had to do with not having the proper teacher certification anymore. And that's kind of speaks to how we need to really advocate for, these regulations are just too onerous for these rural areas. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, we can talk about that further
Yeah.
in commission call, because.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great.
But we just talked about
Absolutely,
childcare needs, so.
it's huge.
Yes, thank you for flagging Kevin Lewis for me.
Mhm.
Infrastructure, so this was actually the longest action plan in the strategy. Is there a number of important facets of our infrastructure system that all justify their own section? And so these included water and wastewater that meet the needs of our existing and future residents and businesses, especially as drought conditions continue. Housing that's available and affordable for the workforce in the region. And housing is one that's been in the plan for a few iterations, so this one was not
Did
new.
you guys solve that one yet?
Yeah.
No, but
Okay.
tomorrow, that's not good.
Tomorrow you're gonna solve it? Nice. Can I
How are
come
you
to that
gonna do
meeting?
that tomorrow?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I thought you had like some great meeting happened or something. with
She'd be a
developers.
billionaire.
But we have been talking about what more of a role that MCEDD can play. I think I'm talking with Regional Solutions about hosting an event with all our different communities, talking about to share what each of them are doing for affordable housing, to learn from each other and identify if there's other things that we can be doing to work on together. So, because we do know, each of the communities is trying in their own way, most of them in some way or another.
Mhm. Hasn't that already occurred with some of these housing forums that have been going on?
Yes, so some of the ones that have been happening have been kind of focused on building up a base for talking about the importance of affordable housing and how to advocate for it. But it hasn't been from the standpoint of, planning staff and
I see.
cities talking about it.
I see, at that level.
Yeah, I think Nate had some meetings on that.
Yeah, I just remember attending one where, like, I think it was White Salmon and some of the other cities. I presented a little bit about, our new policy, and they presented about some of the things they were doing, and.
Was that in person at the college? Yeah.
No, this one was a Zoom.
Oh,
A while
okay.
ago. There's been like 3 housing forums.
Yes,
3 housing forums. One was probably in the last couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah.
And we really talked from the ground up, like people who need housing and what they're experiencing. So,
Yes.
yeah, so, okay, great. Next step, I guess.
Yeah. On the broadband, we are looking for broadband that reaches those last mile customers and includes redundancy to connect our residents and businesses with opportunities for education, for healthcare, jobs, and customers. We are planning for energy systems that are renewable, resilient, efficient, and support all of our communities, even during disruptive events. And then the transportation is a multimodal transportation system that provides a safe, efficient, equitable, and accessible regional transportation system that enhances livability, resilience, and economic vitality. So the transportation is quite a beefy section. There's a lot to talk about between transportation and economic development. Our powerful regional collaboration, we plan to collaborate and advocate as a bi-state region to leverage our assets and to reach our goals. So this goal was unique in that it referenced the actions here are a tool to support the work of the other 3 prior goal areas. So this one is really kind of in support of the other ones. And so here we're going to build our information and advocacy systems and build on the strong collaborative networks that we already have to better achieve our vision. The strategy also has metrics. So for each of the goal areas to gauge the success of the work and help us understand changes over time. So this is things that MCEDD plans to track throughout the period of the strategy. One element of the strategy that's updated annually that you guys get to participate in is the list of essential economic development projects prioritized by each county and then regionally by the MCEDD board. So this is the 2022 list that was adopted in March. To highlight the Wasco County projects, the housing needs here, the Dog River Pipeline, the needs for broadband, and specifically the Cascades East Interconnection and co-location facility. Also the child care center at the college, and then the White River Health District was also listed. And then of course, we also have the top 10 for Washington. And in general, the list focuses on infrastructure projects that are needed to support our communities and businesses and increase resiliency. Since it's developed annually, of course, we try to focus on projects that expect to have some movement over the last year or applying for funding and need that additional support. Many thanks. It was developed with the help of lots of partners, all the folks that came to the meetings. We had a great steering committee, and of course the MCEDD board is our ultimate steering committee. Almost all of my staff was involved in one way or the other, and it was sponsored by Northwest Natural and the EDA. And then I mentioned that Nextdoor is a great partner with the focus groups, and then Blue Marble Creative helped us make this beautiful product, which we have this the print document, and then go to the website. We actually tried to develop a much more user-friendly website, so it's a little bit interactive to present all of the data that we have in the strategy. We have a summary as well that's not 65 pages. It's about 15 pages, and we also have that in Spanish, which is a first for us as well. So happy about that. So gorgeeconomy.org is the website. And we're very happy. So I have a copy for Steve as our board member, and I also have a copy for Tyler. I don't have fancy printed copies for everybody.
Can I have one?
Yes, you can have one. You're out in the cold.
That was easy.
I don't print you I can give you.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I will borrow theirs if I need it. Yeah.
But the website should be.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have questions?
I have some more questions.
I know.
What's more coming?
I know.
So trying to figure out how to say this, but there's so many things in here, and of course, core to you guys is like supporting businesses, right? In terms of a strong, healthy, vibrant business climate in the gorge. And many of the things you talk about, first of all, this is really good. I mean, you guys did a great job, and I think all of it is laudable and great. One of my main primary concerns is this issue of availability of land, really. And it has to do with the UGB thing, and that's why I was asking, is that a universal thing across the gorge? Because I'm not sure that people are verbalizing that. And when I go back to this powerful regional collaboration, it seems like what we're missing on that point in particular is that we're just not on the same page. And I'm not sure we're not on the same page, but we're certainly not communicating like we're on the same page. And the Dalles has been, and Wasco County and the port have been for years, like kind of beating the drum on like, hey, if we look out into the 20 and 50-year time frame, if we don't have land, we're just gonna, I mean, everybody's all about, density and build it up and all this kind of stuff, which, maybe kind of works in the housing arena, but it doesn't work as well in the business arena to just start stacking people on top of each other. And it's just not, I mean, my experience is that's just not what business wants, to just densify, how they operate, which may or may not be good, but it's just the reality of what I've experienced. And so I think for our county, for this community, the UGB thing is just kind of like fading away. Like, we failed, we couldn't do anything with it. So it's just kind of, it's not even mentioned in this document at all. And it always has been, and it's always been, it was always on the list of priorities, and it's not necessarily a project, but a policy thing. And I don't know, maybe it's listed in the bigger document, but I'm just seeing that this whole issue is just kind of fading away, which I've kind of said, fine, it's for the next generation to deal with, because it will rear its super ugly head. And not just in the world of employment lands, it's going to rear its head in every area of life, from housing to affordable housing and everything else. I mean, even mental health and all that other kind of stuff, because if we don't have the space to provide the stuff we need as humans, we're just going to wither, to some extent. So I guess, as a general disappointment, it seems like this whole issue of what are we going to do about our land in the scenic area, which is just this uber constrained area where, we can't really do anything. It's just a huge concern of mine. And I am kind of getting to my wit's end where it's just like, it seems like wherever we go, we just hit a brick wall. But it does seem like the one thing that has been successful in the past is that when we collaborate really strongly as a region, we can get things done. And it's not been happening on this issue in particular. And that's why I kind of asked, do the other counties, have the same concern? Because it seems like they should, but I'm not sure that they do. And maybe you guys could be the one that could help bring us together.
And I had heard that when it isn't in some of the details in the action plans, it just still mentions the UGB issue. I think it might show up in the SWOT in the details, but when the Gorge Commission was updating the management plan, there was some outreach at that point, and it had been brought to my attention that there was potentially like a regional role for MCEDD to help bring folks together to address some of the planning that would be required to do UGB expansions is addressed in the latest management plan. We haven't had the chance to really dig into that yet, but it is something that's on the radar. And I appreciate you highlighting that so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a role for the ports to keep talking about how we can, at different parts, we've had collaboration specifically of the ports, where they're, of course, one of the ones that can highlight the loudest the need for the employable lands. And of course, we also know it's more of an issue on the Oregon side than the Washington side, the UGB issue in general, just since, we already had UGBs.
Right.
The scenic area was adapted.
Yeah.
That were tight.
And it's interesting what you said. You said that you had the EDA regional director down here, and you're going to the ports, and they were saying, yeah, here's our little 48 per piece, right? Or something like that. So when I was at the port, not bragging, but we were doing 5 to 7 to 10 acres a year of development. Now you take those 40 acres and you do the math, it doesn't last very long to when you're completely out of land. And it's like, I just don't believe that people want us to just stop any business growth here. I mean, I don't want it to become crazy, and out of control. But, when I look at this community in particular, and it's like, oh, we have plenty of land. It's like, no, we have like no land. I mean, just go talk to the port. It's like, nobody looks here anymore. I mean, nobody looks at the Dalles anymore as a place to expand or move their business. It just does not really happen very much anymore.
I've heard something, and and maybe even Andrew could speak more to this, about Oregon in general has, as there's been an uptick of, these business recruitment, or not business recruitment, but interest from businesses that are looking for places to expand, and the state helping them. And there are just very few, very large parcels that are available across the state. And
In Oregon in general.
yes, and I think Oregon is trying to think of how they can help more of those come online, because some of them are looking for, very large pieces of land, like 100 acres, which is not anything that we can even talk about here.
Yeah. Well, I've always said, I'm from an economic standpoint. I mean, you want a strong economy, and if you can't have a strong economy if you don't have business activity. And I always think about it in terms of the state of, first, the US has to be, doing well, but more importantly, the state of Oregon has to be doing well. And I always think Portland has to be doing well, because we're not the center of it, but we benefit from economic growth around us. And so if Portland is dismal and the state is dismal, then it's unlikely we're going to be doing well. So, but the main thing is, I just feel like, this issue of how we're going to use land and how we're going to expand our urban growth boundaries, even if Hood River County and the city of Hood River and other communities in your region, if they don't think it's important today, I guarantee you in the next 20 years,
Yeah.
they will find themselves in a very difficult position, fighting the same fight that we're fighting and losing on our own. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner, one of the strategies that is out there is your convening power. And I've been advocating for a long time to bring the cities and the counties of the scenic areas together to really just talk about that specific issue. And so we do it from a staff standpoint with the planning directors, those kind of gorge planning departments. And we send a lot of correspondence out. But in reality, unless we've got the support of those commissions and city councils, we don't have a lot other than just kind of red flagging the issues that are out there. If that's a strategy, maybe that's something that you and I could work on. Just on a kind of a standing meeting for those specific entities.
And that's kind of my basic question is, because you talk to everybody, but it's like, it's not clear to me if other areas in the scenic area are as challenged as we are. And you talk about Washington and Oregon. That's a good point. Like, that's the whole thing, Friends of Gorge, like, well, you have plenty of land because there's lots of land in Washington across from you. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. So, but at the same time, from their standpoint, from a regional planning perspective, it's like, there's plenty of land. It's right across the river from you. And so then you have to, work through that challenge. And I just don't know, Tyler, if there's really the heart for people to come together to really, they're not where we're at, unfortunately. They will be there at one point, and maybe we just have to wait until they get to that point to where we finally come together and try to fight this collectively. But we obviously have not been successful, very successful approaching this on our own.
But to that point, the community outreach team on this last trip, with our debrief, we've invited this committee and Clickitat County commissioners who sit on our MCEDD board to join in this conversation because we need them.
Yeah.
And so I think that this gives us that opportunity to start that conversation and look at convening and where do we go. So I think that we've set the stage. Commissioner Hamlin said, "Let me know when, I'll be there." Commissioner Souter is fortunately moving on at the end of the year. So we'll have to reach out to the board and see if somebody else wants to play. But I think that we're moving, to your point, in that direction. So.
I think MCEDD board meetings could also be an opportunity to ask for feedback on how much of an issue and how we can move forward, because we have each of the counties has a commissioner there and a rep from each of the cities. So that could be a good temperature taking as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The one organization I would think this would be a top priority for them would be One Gorge, right? It's basically the ports and they're primarily do economic development. And yet it's not really an issue that comes up there unless I come to a meeting and raise my ugly head.
Well, I just have a question.
Sorry, I'm done capitalizing, but I just want to make that point because,
Yeah, I've never heard it before.
yeah, I'm sure you haven't.
But you said something, Scott, that I wanted to ask about. You said planning around the expansion of the UGB. And, that's a conversation that I never hear about. So, it's what is it that we want here as a region? And what is it that we can control, for instance? And that's the conversation I'm interested in. And I don't know where that conversation happens, and who is at the table for that specific conversation. But that would be really helpful for me. And so that's what I never hear. And so I think that should be part of the conversation. And especially if you expand and have shovel ready, do you have control over what comes? That's another, I think that's a really important issue. Because we certainly, I would think, would want, family wage businesses. We'd want things that don't pollute. I mean, that would be my own, those things that I think about, but I'm not hearing that from these conversations. So, and the other question I have, and I think I already know the answer, but in case I'm wrong, I hear about businesses wanting to come here but can't, but I never hear about who those businesses are and what kind of businesses are inquiring and how much land do they want. I never have the facts. And I don't know if that's confidential.
A lot of times it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. I think what we're experiencing here now, though, is that they like the state, a lot of like input comes from the state because most businesses go to the state. And then the state knows what we have. And so they go, not for there, So that's like, for example, when Google came here, the only reason they came here is because the state, looked at the Google came and said, or whoever they were at the time, said, we're looking for this, this, and this. And they said, okay, let's look at our list. Okay, we got communities. And they brought them out and said, okay, here's your 6 or 8 communities that you should focus your efforts on. And they called us. So that was the beginning of that. But no, your points are well taken. The one thing I would say, one thing you could go back to, and it's actually available if you go to the city's website and you go back to the initial urban growth boundary study and documents and expansion proposal.
I read that.
Okay, it's an interesting thing.
You're talking about the economic opportunities report? Is that
No, this is way back. This was when
way
Dan
back.
Duro was there.
Oh, no, I haven't read that.
Yeah. I'll find it for you and point you to it. But it provides, it was the city's big effort to expand the urban growth boundary. It was the start. It was the very first time. And this was the all of the documentation saying why they needed it, where they needed it. They showed where they were proposing the expansion would be and everything. And then that was the start of like, no, that's not going to happen. And that was the start of us being shut down. Because I think prior to that, we all thought as communities that, there was this process in the scenic area plan that would allow these expansions and you had to justify it and provide all this stuff. And that's what the city worked for years to do. And then it was like, yeah, we're not going to accept that. And that was the beginning of the end of that. And we've been struggling really ever since. But I think going back and looking at that is an interesting historical document, if nothing else, to see what was the justification they thought back then and how much land did they think they need and where did they think the land would be? Because all that's in that document.
And
it was a
then
full proposal.
The more recent document, the Economic Opportunities Report, I think it talks about both, like needing larger sects of land, but also smaller developments, which I never really hear the port talking about, is kind of redeveloping smaller tracts for smaller kinds of businesses that at least the Economic Opportunities Report says that's what we're likely to be getting here. And we should be, making plans for those like breweries and things, wine tasting and things like that. And I never hear that kind of, the last time we talked to the port, they're looking at Dufur, for an expansion, which isn't very practical for businesses, let's face it, but I never really hear about why aren't we like buying and redeveloping smaller, shovel-ready areas. So
Yeah, and I think really you need all of that.
those are things I think about.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I think what we really want and what you guys say is we want a diversified economy. And that's where our challenge was before, when we were such an aluminum town and we were so dependent on that industry. And when that thing crumbled, we kind of crumbled with it.
And now we're a Google town.
Kind of, I mean, there's a little bit of that. And I think that's what I really want, is for us to have the room to provide diversification of that business community, different businesses, different industries, small, large, medium, all that kind of stuff, because you really want these guys are the experts in this. And what you ultimately want in your economy is a really diversified economy that is resilient to all the changes that will occur. So. And we weren't resilient before, and we paid for it for decades. And I don't want to be there again.
Okay, well.
Sorry.
No, good discussion.
Yeah.
Sorry, I totally underestimated how long this would go, Kathy. You were my first county, so I will warn the other counties.
Oh, I just have, do other counties have county-specific economic development commissions like we do?
Yours is somewhat unique. We are also contracted with Sherman County, but there we work just directly with the court and the cities on their projects. Hood River County does not. We have a group there that we provide some staffing for, which is just like the lead staff for the different, the counties, the city supports, getting together periodically to talk about what we're working on. Skamania and Clickitat County. So Washington State funds kind of like a county level economic development support. So they have Clickitat County Economic Development Administration and Skamania County Economic Development Council.
It's got to be challenging working across state. It's kind of like the housing authority. It's really challenging, the different funding and different regulations and all that.
Yeah, it's a constant that, and we've, over the last year, it's been an opportunity for the MCEDD board to talk about how are we balancing our Oregon and Washington services and making sure that everybody's feeling appreciated and also taking use of our services. Like right now, we have so many contracts on the Oregon side for extra support and not on the Washington side. And so it's a balancing act.
Yeah, I bet. Oh.
You guys doing a great job for us.
Yeah, thank you.
We really love the work with EDC.
Yeah, thank you. It's a wonderful report and a good discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you tonight.
Yes.
You might want to explain that. You have a meeting tonight? I'm sorry, I'm a little feisty this morning.
You need to be on the road more often.
Okay, so at this time, do we need to recess the Wasco County Board of Commissioner meeting and open up the Wasco County 4-H and Extension Service District meeting? How was that, Kathy?
That was perfect.
Okay.
And Nicole Strong is here. She's been hanging out, waiting for her meeting to come up.
Oh,
okay. Oh, this was great. I got a bonus education.
Okay. Hello, Nicole. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you all?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, great.
All right. Would you like to lead us in this discussion, Nicole?
Well, I mean, y'all put me on the agenda. I'm not quite. I imagine that the purpose of this meeting is to clarify that the Extension Service District supports the recommended IGA and that the county administrator will be signing on our behalf.
Nicole, I can run with this if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, so as you know, the extension district actually flows through Wasco County, their budget, those funds. And so this is a budget issue and honestly a county issue to sign off on the IGA distributing the community service fee. Originally, we thought that's the extension, but it's not, because it all flows through Wasco County. So I think, you know, we've got Nicole here. They've certainly talked about this. We talked about it at the extension budget meeting. And I think everybody is in favor of moving forward with that. And really, this is just a procedural process for us to be able to sign the NGA as the extension district and not as Wasco
Will it be the same for the library district?
No, the library is a little bit different. You have a board that you appoint. You have representatives that they have a board with your representatives on it that they could approve this.
Okay,
The Extension Service District doesn't have a,
okay,
they have an advisory board, but it's not populated with your appointees.
okay. All right. And so we probably do need a motion for this.
A very long, complicated motion.
Who
Yes.
Your turn to read.
I think Steve did it the first time.
He did. I was going to, there was one change in here. I was going to say there, under our signatures, that still lists me as the chair.
Yes, I think
Okay.
I fixed it on the documents.
Okay. And the other thing I was going to mention, and I'm not sure if I get the math right because I was doing it quickly. This, even though like the extension district's, you know, only going to get 1.4% of this, it still equates to about $35,000 a year, or, you know, about almost $700,000. So, I mean, you know, again, I mean, it's a very small number from a percentage, but they're still going to get $35,000 a year just from this agreement. Again, it's assuming both happen and
Right.
So,
Cool.
okay. With that, then I would move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between Wasco County, City of the Dalles, Columbia Fire and Rescue, Wasco County Library Service District, North Wasco County Parks and Recreation, Wasco County 4-H and Extension District, Wasco County Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Port of the Dalles for the apportionment of the Google LLC, Design LLC, and Moraine Industries LLC Strategic Investment Program Community Service fee.
Thank you, and I will second your motion.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there you go, Nicole.
Well, this is a good news story. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
money coming, hopefully coming your way as well.
We'll take it.
Yeah,
It'll be a while, but
yeah, it's not coming soon, so don't spend it yet.
yeah, don't put it in the budget quite yet,
Nope,
so.
nope.
We also have some minutes. And so I would move to approve the minutes from February 2nd, 2022, like for the extension district.
I'll second that motion.
Any corrections or further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hey, I guess, is that it?
That's it, unless Nicole had anything she wanted to share with board.
No, I feel like we're gonna come back for our budget hearing, so we can chat again then. Unless is there anything you need or want to know from me at this point?
I don't think so. Just keep doing all the great work
That's
you guys
right.
are doing. I can hardly keep track of it all, so.
I know, aren't they wonderful? We have such
Yeah.
great staff in Wasco County.
Yeah, so, all right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Nice to see you.
You too. Have a great day.
All right. Okay. So the last thing, at least on our,
We close that.
oh, yes, okay. So now we are closing the 4-H and Extension Service District meeting and going back into the Wasco County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so we did get a letter from Kenny about he would like me to serve on the House Bill 4123 City County Coordinated Homeless Service Advisory Committee. You know, I think right now you both know that the mayor has convened, and it's been going on for, gosh, a year and a half. And I've been on that, the mayor's on it, Dan Richardson's on it. But this would be expanding now into Kenny's service area, which would be Sherman and Hood River County. So he's looking for governmental representation on this as well. And he's asked me, and I, of course, would be happy to serve on that for the remaining time as we get this thing up started. And I'm happy to bring back information on how things are going with that. It's basically to come up with a regional strategic plan for homeless services in the area, basically. And at the MCCAC board, we've already started that process, so we're already kind of doing that. So this would just formalize that advisory board, basically. So would like your agreement with that?
Have fun.
Yeah, I'm fine. It sounds good. This is, so it's always interesting. This is $1 million over a 5-year period.
2
to do-
years.
Oh, 2 years.
2
Okay.
years.
Oh, okay, to develop a 5-year strategic plan.
Right,
Okay.
there you go.
So, but it's really just for the planning of that and not for,
It can be used. for
Okay.
operations, but
That's gonna be my stickler on
Okay.
this, because Mr. Lapointe has numerous times told me that the strategic plan is basically done, and that these funds, as we lobbied for them with 4123, was for implementation of the plan. So, because over and over again, he tells me that we've pretty much done, and is that the case with this, Kathy?
I would say that we definitely need to get together as this advisory group and see what has been done, what we have, what we still need. I think that there's been some movement towards that, but it's not completely done. Yeah, and so.
can this money be used for some implementation?
We can use some of it for operations, but of course, that's not sustainable.
Okay, so
So,
operations though, not necessarily like pallet shelters or something like that?
yeah. I
Yeah,
think
for
so.
that.
Mhm.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. I
as
think
well
so.
as operations,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, oh, you mean like to purchase pallet shelters?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so. No, not
Okay,
for capital
okay.
expenses, no.
So maybe to clarify what he told me
Okay.
was that with the implementation money, he could utilize that to hire a grant coordinator.
Thank you, Steve, that's right. A
Something,
homeless coordinator.
something of that magnitude, so that they could continue to go get these
Okay.
pools where they're at to continue the next 5 years of this 7-year project, so that the 5 years are funded through these grant things. It's something that we don't normally like to do here, but Mr. Lapointe is fairly confident that he and an organization can do that. So that's the way I understand
That's
it.
right.
And that's why I pushed at AOC for this to move forward with the implementation of those dollars, not just for development, because our region was so far ahead of everybody else.
Okay.
That it only made sense to use it for something substantial. So.
Okay.
And let me give you an example of what's happening in our community right now that we have not addressed. And having a homeless service coordinator type of person is going to really help. So St. Vincent de Paul is no longer going to be running any warming or cooling shelters. And we're going to need to jump in as MCCAC and figure out how we're going to do this. And so that is something that has not been on the strategic plan, but needs to be pretty urgently here. So, yeah, so I think, and Steve's right. And then to really have somebody focused on this issue and to bring in more resources. So, yeah, so it's a good thing. And we're one of 8 sites in the state to get this money. So
And it's regional.
it's for the 3 counties, Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman.
Right. Right, and some of the other communities are singular, And some of them have, what, doubled up? A couple of
I
them
know.
have doubled up.
Yeah,
And so they kind of took our model. And while this was still in the development phases of the bill itself.
one thing that I think is unique for us is that the money is not coming to the county, it's going to McCack. And
Right.
Penny lobbied really strongly for that.
In the
And
other regions, it's going to the county.
I believe so, at least the last time I was up to speed on what was happening around the state
Right.
with this. And so that counties are taking this on, which is.
Yeah,
a big
there were
win.
some counties and some cities that were.
And it's really good because our region, the people that know this work are taking on, so we don't have to spin up experts in this.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, and I appreciate your support. I appreciate Tyler's support and the support of Steve at AOC and your support as well and getting this money in. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Question on like the navigation center, last time I had a chat with, I don't know if we want to talk about that, but what I was thinking is like related to this, operationally, do they have the funds? Is it going to be able to have continuous operations?
Mhm.
The reason I think of that, because I'm thinking of like what's the other thing that Lane's working on?
Oh, the resolution
The
center.
resolution center, which seemed like their plan shows a fairly significant operational shortfall.
Mhm.
And what was the other? There was something else that has a significant, it seems like we have a lot of operational shortfalls, which are problematic because, just because we have a building or a facility or whatever, it's like if we can't operate it, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, think of it this way. So McCack is moving from downtown to the navigation center. So
New place.
a new place and all of the fundraising is going into this capital expense to build this building. And we'll be moving the current pallet shelters to that site. And so from an operational standpoint, they'll still be getting the funding from the state that comes from feds and wherever to do what they do today. And I think the only decrease in funding we're going to see is the COVID money. It won't be coming in, but they will, staff accordingly for that. But it's not like the resolution center that is a brand new service to the community. This is an ongoing service in a new location with the same funding streams.
So there's an expectation anyway that the operational funding will be there for the long term.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because community action's been in the community for a long
Right.
time. Yeah,
And the goal is to increase it.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the status of that? Is that facility moving forward?
I think so.
Okay.
I think Kenny's secured a lot of the funding. He's getting contracts in right now from all the different funding sources. We just approved him signing a bunch of those the other night in an emergency meeting. He still seems confident that he's getting the money he needs to build this. Of course, now building supplies are a lot more expensive, so we haven't had that conversation, but as far as I know, things are moving forward. We still, as far as I know, hasn't gone through the permitting process, so that's yet to come, so.
And then those wraparound services that will join in the office building, will they be contributing in any
They
form or
will.
fashion other than just as provider
Yeah.
service?
Good point, Steve. I think depending on, which one, some of them will be paying some rent,
Okay,
to the building to be housed there. But the vision is that community action won't be paying for mental health, for instance. You may have a mental health satellite, their funding streams are supporting that. And I know the CCO wants to be housed there as well. They'll pay rent. And so kind of depends on the organization, how that's going to play out. So. And I think there's going to be a kitchen to rent out and various things. So community kitchen type thing. So it's exciting. We need it. So anything else on this or thumbs up?
No, that's good then.
no, I'm good on that one.
Yay, one more meeting. Whoa. I like the way this works, I can just,
And it was an accident.
All right. I think that concludes our agenda. So how about commission call? What have you guys been up to?
So let me ask, I have a quick question for Kristen.
Wake up.
Simple question for you. So the MOU that we approved at the last meeting, the question is, and the reason I'm asking it, because I always look at the Gorge Commission agendas, and I didn't see anything on their agenda, but obviously it's probably too soon, but will the commission themselves, the full Gorge Commission, consider and potentially approve that document as well?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay,
It's on
so
our next agenda.
it is, the one that they just sent out today?
Yeah, yesterday.
Oh, I looked and I didn't see it. Okay.
So there's an executive session on there.
Oh,
So
Oh, okay, but they can't approve in an executive session.
and then we'll have to come out and.
Come out like we do and
Okay, I didn't see it as an agenda item. It's just one of the things in there. Okay, all right. Thanks, Kristen.
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just an agreement with the staff and then the Gorge Commission like, wow, we don't know. We don't have any reason to do any of that stuff. That was in terms of commission call, I guess the one thing that I was concerned about was Kevin's note to us, and primarily the fact that Head Start is supposedly closing and why we're not in the loop when that's being considered. You know what I mean? It just seems like it should be somebody's in the loop, and it's like the first thing I hear about is like they're closing and it's like already a done deal. It's
yeah.
somewhat disappointing.
Yeah, so is there one of us that wants to take the lead in helping with this or to make those phone calls? Because I think, we need to probably check in with Head Start, find out what happened, what the specifics are, Nancy Patton, see what she knows. So I didn't know if you'd already started.
no,
that.
I didn't, because
Happy to.
I wanted to converse with the two of you about it before I ran with this one,
Sure.
because I knew that a child care group has been formed, and they're working forward, but why Head Start,
Mhm. I have this
I have no idea.
note from Kevin. I kind of inquired a little further. He said the issue with Head Start is they lost their certified person and the state would not accept a waiver for the other. So she doesn't have an associate's. So,
There it is.
that's just unfortunate.
You hit it when you said regulation.
Yeah.
So in the Head Start program, I don't think it's primarily childcare, isn't it primarily education
Education.
for those kids that,
Mhm.
okay.
Qualify.
So it's interesting that the state would say, we're not going to educate those kids that need it out here anymore. I mean, that's just kind of shocking. It seems like, okay, we have a problem with staffing. How are we going to deal with it? Seems like the onus should be on the state a little bit, or the feds, like, go find your person, get somebody certified.
Yeah, because they're like a teacher, right? They're like a preschool
Yeah.
teacher but it seems like it shouldn't be an onerous process for somebody to get certified down there, but that would be a question, like, what does it take to get somebody down there that's maybe willing to do this certified? And how can we help? I think that would be, and to advocate at the state level. And then also, Steve, I'm wondering with this childcare group, if they're dialed in at all to that $100 million grants that are coming out for childcare from the state, if there's anyone that is actually looking at that or has the capacity to apply for any, like if somebody wanted to do home care, for instance, I think there's some grants available for somebody to do that. And maybe that's a shorter term solution to getting Head Start, before we get Head Start going.
That was the other thing, now that I think about it, the other one that had an operational shortfall was this childcare facility up at the college. They're saying, they have the funds to build the facility, but the operational element is like lacking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to operate it.
Uh-huh.
So, That's not gonna work very well.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough. That's gonna be a challenge for
Yeah.
sure. So,
Right, and workforce is, tied in with the college on this,
Right.
with ours and COCC and Klamath. We have representatives, so, yeah, everybody's well up on that, so.
So is there, I mean, it's interesting, like, what's the solution then? I mean, obviously, the solution is just more money, but it's like, okay, well,
mhm.
Solution is people.
People and a sustainable wage. That's really the issue, is it
Yeah.
doesn't pay.
so they
especially-
can't find people to do that work
No.
under the current compensation levels.
And Nancy would be the expert. I mean, maybe we could have her come and talk to us. I mean, we kind of talked with her just a little bit the other day about what's really happening in this community, but the issues are, really around, if you're gonna be a daycare provider, there are all these regulations. It all costs money. And then at the end of the day, people can't afford to pay the person who's doing it in their home to make it a living wage for that person. And so we're kind of stuck, which is why I think the state is pouring this money into childcare providers to get their wages up. And then, but what they're doing around the regulations, Nancy mentioned, as I recall, okay, they kind of said, okay, no, you no longer have to have a sprinkler system in your house,
Right.
I mean, it's like, what else is being regulated that's really causing barriers for this? Because it's putting a real crimp in everything. It's like the first cog in the wheel of getting people to work. And
Right.
it's kind of like housing. We're just kind of stuck, so.
It's interesting though that, I mean, in the colleges scenario, they find apparently the resources to actually deal with all of the facility needs, but they can't figure out how to operate it. I mean, and I
Yeah.
get the fact that but it's just like, it just seems like there's gotta be a way to do it. I mean, obviously it's a money issue, but it's like, and I guess the problem is that they've obviously determined that they can only charge so much. Is that like, that's the
Absolutely.
issue.
Yeah, that is, and I know, not as a fact, but certainly anecdotally, that Great and Small, which has operated forever at the
Mhm.
hospital, is heavily subsidized.
By the hospital.
Yes.
Okay. Meaning that the fees or the,
Do not pay for the cost.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going back to it. Our federal partners and our state partners are over-regulating the hell out of everything that we try to do. Not just in childcare, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And we've over-regulated ourselves to the point to now that I don't know how we're gonna fix it.
And it sounds like in that arena, there's a lot of regulations that, so many qualified people per, whatever. and all that,
Right,
Which I'm sure there's a reason
Oh,
behind
sure,
all of that stuff.
sure, and it's child safety is so
Right,
important.
right.
Yeah.
But then if you make it so that you can't even
Right.
operate the facility,
Sprinklers, yeah.
then somebody can't even get the childcare, they can't work. I mean, it's a challenge.
Do you think it would be valuable to have Nancy come and give us kind of an overall state of the union of childcare in our county? Just to kind of, so we get, I mean, she's the expert, right? Like, she wasn't prepared for the questions last time, but
Yeah.
like, how many have closed? How many childcare do we have open? How many kids can it take? What is the need? I'm sure she knows all that.
I mean, it's clearly a huge issue, one of the huge issues that
Absolutely.
are out there. I'm not sure how we solve that,
Yeah.
or what our role
Yeah.
is, but,
I think our role is advocacy,
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think,
but we have to know what's going on
Right.
in order to advocate, right? We need to have the facts. So maybe Kathy, we could get her on a future agenda that's convenient for her. And for now, Steve, are you gonna take
So,
on this?
well,
County?
I didn't get this. Why don't you just get Kevin in touch with her? And then,
With Nancy?
and then, and then we can, and then mention in that we're tying him into the group.
Okay, I can do that.
that is already formed. And, because I looked it up to see if I got a follow-up letter and I didn't get one.
Well, that's because I pinged him
Okay.
and told him that we were I was gonna bring it up at commission call, that we would
All right.
talk about it. So that's why
Okay,
he sent me back something.
well,
So,
then I don't need to get in, it just,
okay, I'll take
I
it.
think we got it dialed in and,
Okay,
uh,
all right. And then we'll have Nancy come and talk to us, and I'll make sure Kevin's available to attend that. And then the grants. And did you say there was already a group down there that are starting to talk in Moffett? Did you say?
no, already here up at the college.
Oh, I
Nancy
thought you
and-
meant in
and
Moffett. Okay,
Carrie and Nate,
okay,
there's a whole host of
yeah.
folks working on childcare issue.
So-
Mostly around that project.
Nicole is our representative from the county on that group.
Okay, but that's for the college.
So,
Okay,
well, it's for childcare, community childcare.
okay.
So,
And I think if Nancy can specifically help us with what the need is in Moffett, I think would be great. So we have a sense.
same need everywhere else.
Yeah. And to a certain extent, I think the Head Start is slightly different,
Mhm.
just because it's really an educational focus. And
Right.
it's like, wow, it's just stunning to me that they would say, yeah, well, you don't have the right person, so therefore we're going to defund you and you can't provide the service anymore. It's like, how is that helping?
Yeah, that's not
Right, they should be reaching out to the local school district to
about what happened.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Paul?
No, I'm still thinking about going back to NACO. But nobody else is gonna go, apparently. Everybody's too busy.
I'm still looking at it.
Okay,
Where is it this time?
it's somewhere in Colorado, like Holmes,
We're calling,
is it?
no,
I think it's
it's outside of Denver.
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
somewhere Denver.
Somewhere outside of Denver.
And yeah, I've gone twice now. I went to Long Beach and then I went to Vegas. And both of them have been like, there's so much information, it's fire hose every day, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of good information. So I found them pretty helpful
That was
Yeah.
July.
since July sometimes. I don't know.
All right, well, if they had a lot of information on how to be a grandmother, I'd go, but, because that's my future career, so.
You were already one.
Well, that's true, but a
That'd
more,
be a more full-time.
let's make that part-time. Yeah, okay, all right, well, I think we'll go ahead and adjourn if there's nothing else.
All right.
All right,
Sure.
it's recording.
Just
Recording stopped.
See you, Kristen.